Good afternoon, or good afternoon to most of you. I know we've got folks joining from across the region, so you may still be in morning time. But welcome to our business operations webinar on turning your work into a conference session. And this is brought to you by the Business Operations Conference Programs Committee. So I thought it would be great if we could start with some introductions. So my name is Elliot Hale Langner. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a contracts and assignment specialist at the University of Iowa. And my role within the Business Operations Planning Committee is co-chair of the Programs Committee with Becky. So I would love to know who else has joined us today. If you're catching the recap, you could maybe just, do a little check in with yourself. Who are you? Why'd you decide to watch the recap of the webinar? But yeah, for those of you that are here today live, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, your name, your institution, your role, and why you decided to log on for the webinar today. I know a lot of us are joining from, a quick break in the day, maybe even a lunch hour. So we definitely appreciate that you have joined us for our information and then conversation. All right. Becky's looking for some ideas about potential programs. David looking for some collaborators, which I think is an excellent idea. I was just chatting with a colleague in the office and I said the best way to get your feet into program presentations is to not do it alone because it can be a little intimidating. And it's always nice to have a buddy up there when you're presenting to a group. Feel free to keep on adding your thoughts and your contributions of why you decided to join us today in the chat. We will go ahead and move forward with our content. So the information that I'm going to cover today is a brief overview of the Business Operations Conference, an overview of the program proposal form that gets submitted, and then some time for brainstorming and some group discussion. And then at the end, bringing it all together to get ready for those next steps. So the overview of the conference, the Business Operations Conference will take place in October of this year, the 26th through the 29th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It will be co-located with the Residence Education and Facilities Content Conferences. So if you were able to attend last year, it's going to be a very similar setup where we've got kind of three conferences in one with opportunities for folks to focus on their track, whether it's business operations, residence education, or facilities, or some opportunities for crossover or maybe cross-pollination connections with folks from the different tracks. And business operations staff, or really staff from any of the content areas from all levels, are encouraged to attend. There is definitely something for everyone. I've got linked here the call for programs website, and there's also a QR code, and then we've got those dropped into the chat as well so that you can check those out later. But because this is being recorded, you can access it after the session today so that you can revisit those pages when you're ready. So when we start to think about what makes a good program, the first thing is, what is the topic of the program? So as a committee planning the Business Operations Conference, we've got a non-exhaustive list of possible topic areas. So we've got marketing, conferences or summer camps and conferences, assignments and occupancy, front desk operations and customer service, technology, fiscal controls and budgeting, staffing, and that's a pretty big one. Hiring, supervision, retention, student staff, professional staff, or a mix, as is the case for a lot of us. housing accommodations, move in, move out, and then also assessment of all of the topics above. So, what is the proposal going to include? I have broken it down here on the slide to hopefully make it feel not super intimidating. But when you visit the program proposal call for programs website, it breaks it down there, as well as once you click to actually submit that session through Sessionize, which is the platform we use to collect the proposals. The information that you're going to need to gather is first your hopefully catchy session title and description of what you'd like to present, the format that you've selected. So you've got a couple options. It could be lecture style, a panel discussion with multiple presenters, a round table where you've got folks broken up into groups focused on a particular topic, or an interactive workshop. So selecting one of those. And then you'll need to define 3 learning objectives for your program, and then a session outline that describes how are you going to accomplish those learning objectives that you've just defined. And then, of course, presenter information. One key piece of the proposal is selecting from the list of the ACUHO-I core competencies, which one is connected to your program, to ensure that the work that we're putting out there, the conversations that we're starting and hopefully sustaining throughout the year, are connected to those core competencies, which include the foundations of the profession, student learning and development, residential facilities, business management, human resources, ancillary partnerships, public-private partnerships, or those P3 partnerships, emergency management, and dining services. And there's a QR code that will take you to the ACUHO-I online environment where you can log in with your account to see more information about this. But again, it's linked in the chat, in the QR code, and then in the presentation that you'll receive after today. So I'm not here to waste time. I want us to dive right in to brainstorming about programs that you have attended in the past. So, what is the best program ever? What's the best conference program, presentation, webinar that you've attended in recent memory? And then, what made it so good? What could be replicated from that presentation? And then once you've got some ideas, go ahead and share out in the chat or unmute, like raise your hand to share within the Zoom. And I'll give us a few minutes to brainstorm. So don't mind the silence while our brains are cooking. And then whoever wants to break the ice by putting their ideas in the chat or unmuting or raising their hand, please do so.
I'll give it a go since nobody's saying anything. Recently, I went to ACUHO-I and also went to ACUHO, which is the Southeast version of a similar thing. And I honestly am kind of a veteran of things and didn't really get much out of most of them. I think what I want to say though is there's really, and this is what I'm thinking about as I'm putting together a proposal, is I think you can go one of 2 ways. One is trying to give some content that people can sink their teeth into, that's real practical. And then the other is giving them an opportunity to like share what they're doing or like workshop kind of what is maybe the obstacles they're running into in a certain thing. And then a third one I'll throw out there, which I did pick up in the last couple conferences, is sort of connecting with a personality, so that you see somebody who's doing something really interesting and then you want to follow up with them. I feel like 50 minutes or whatever is really difficult to get something good or tangible in that session. So most of what I learned recently is kind of seeing what other people do and how they operate, and then maybe following up to connect with them later.
Thank you so much for sharing, David. I really appreciate the points you're making about, we have limited time to share information. And then, what does that follow-up look like after? How do we turn what we've learned, maybe a few crumbs of ideas, and turn that into like the baked good at the end? So, I think we can all relate to that going to conferences that you come away energized and then you get back to campus and you're like, wait, what was I going to do with that? How do I turn that into something that works for me? So thank you so much for sharing. And we've got some folks in the chat contributing that they're looking for, innovative program proposals, creativity, templates that they can take back to their campus, different ways to think about a topic. Because with that non-exhaustive list of topics I had shared earlier, there's a lot that goes on among those, and there's a lot that we have in common. We all work with students for the most part. Students typically are a package deal with a family member, a supporter, a parent. And depending on our roles, we may interact with them right away or not until they've been cooking for a bit with staff that are more on the front line. So there's a lot of similarities between our experiences, even though they are inevitably going to be varied because we're at big schools and small schools, public and private, rural, urban, suburban, some of us. So there's a lot to think about there. Was there anybody else that wanted to unmute or add to the chat on what made a recent program really good? I can share one. It was actually at the Business Operations Conference last year. And the topic was RACI, which is spelled RACI, which is a tool that project managers use to manage projects, to manage all kinds of tasks and people. And I don't know much about project management. I mean, I know how to manage my tasks, but I haven't taken any classes or anything on that. But it was a really accessible way to introduce a tool that was new to me that I felt like I could apply to my role, to my campus in some smaller ways. So it felt like there was a lot of scale available to, you know, bring it back to campus really little and then maybe scale up over time. So really enjoyed that and felt like I really gained a lot, even though it was just, 45, 50 minutes. And then we've got another contribution in the chat. Just those solid takes that can be taken away and applied to campus, and also always appreciating laughing, which Ashley, I can totally agree with you on that. So thank you all for contributing so far. It's time for more brainstorming. So I've got some questions on the screen that I'll read through in just a second. And I have it broken out by initials to hopefully get some different contributions because we don't have time for all of us to answer all of the questions, but if folks want to share. So if you're in the first initial A through H, what is the problem you face in your role that you have a great solution for that you want to tell other people about? Or what is something your current Gen Z students have taught you about? If you're in the first initials I through P, what's a new problem that you don't have a solution for yet? Or what do you wish your supervisor knew about you, your role, and your work? And then if you're rounding out the alphabet in the Q through Z, how do you find or make meaning in your work? What is something that our current Gen Z students are making you rethink entirely? So I'm going to give us another couple of minutes. As soon as you're ready to add to the chat or to unmute and get your ideas out there, please do so. I can start us off this time. So, a problem in my role is I hire student staff. And depending on the time of the year, I hire one, two, sometimes three, sometimes four at a time. But it is tricky to get the best candidates to me because I am beholden to specific HR processes and templated applications and stuff like that. So I was having a hard time with students applying to basically a general application template that didn't really tell me anything about what they could bring to my role. So what I do now is once they've applied through that HR template, they are instructed to go to a Microsoft form that I have set up that collects information about their availability, which is often very important. Sometimes I'm only hiring for people that can work on Tuesday or Thursday. And then it also has them answer a couple of kind of questions that I would consider are basic interview questions, but it allows me to get a little deeper in the interview with some of the basics out of the way, like, what do you understand this position to be like or be about? What is something that has prepared you for this role? Those kinds of things. So it's felt pretty innovative in the last year to help me narrow down 100+ candidates for maybe one or two positions. Who else has great ideas, or what are we doing to work with our Gen Z students because they're making us think really differently?
I can jump in, Ellie, if that's okay. Something that my current Gen Z students have taught me, I've been working on some of our marketing materials and trying to get some different ideas, and they're just so much more knowledgeable at that kind of stuff. I learned recently that you can screenshot a QR code if you're on your phone, and it'll take you to it. So stupid, but like blew my mind. So they are teaching me all types of little things. But I've really been enjoying spending time with them and the things that, like with social media, the things that draw their eye, different trends, different things like that. So I am excited to brush up and get a little bit better at my social media stuff. A problem I face in my current role. Um, Oh man. I feel like there's so many. I don't know. I need my other A's, my other A to H's. Help me out with a problem we face that you have a solution for lately. Help me out.
All right, Ashley, I'm going to jump in now.
Yeah, David, let's do it.
Let's see here. We have a huge problem over at Yale right now, where we have a lot of staff that are electing into our buyout program. So anybody that's of the age of retirement. So because of this, it's causing a possible issue for summer, knowing who's on first, because you don't know who's gone, who's in that position now to refill it and so forth. So our normal campus partners that we worked with, we don't know if they're going to be the same ones that are going to be around for us during the summer. So that change is one of the issues that we're currently dealing with. And one way that we're trying to do that or circumvent it is reaching out and preemptive and asking like, hey, just trying to check with you to make sure, are you still going to be our point of contact for X? And we're just trying to have meetings and things like that leading up to the summer to hopefully stay on top of things so that no balls get dropped or anything like that. As you know, in years past, everything was fine. We had the same person that we were working with. So that's one thing that we are dealing with.
All right, last chance for contributions before we move forward. Uh, Hopefully, these have given you some things to think about, even if you don't have an answer yet. David?
Yeah, I'll do one. So this is more on the laughter side, hopefully. One of the things that I learned when I was like a hall director was to we would hang out at the desk a lot, and I played dumb and asked for like language that they use that I probably didn't know as an old guy. So I learned some new terms, like Riz was one that they shared with me about, having charisma and being cool and having games. So that was pretty hilarious. And then the other one I picked up on was girly pop. And like I hadn't heard that one before. So I know there's like a whole list of them probably, and they've probably changed in the last year, but somebody could use that to have some fun with. I think a problem that we're dealing with that I'm still at the beginning stages of trying to figure out a system for is like our care process. So we might have 4 or 5 assistant directors in hire, and when we get an elevated issue through conduct or some kind of behavior problem or a major roommate conflict, all 4 or 5 of us kind of swarm to the problem, and we all like talk about it and want our opinion heard, and like this is how we should handle the situation. I mean, my director oversees all that, but it kind of runs through all of us, and I want to create a way where we like divide that out, and like only so many, maybe a pair of people work together to deal with each student so they get more attention, and then we also aren't rehashing the problem over and over again, and it gets more dealt with by specific people, sort of like setting up a case management system. And right now it's pretty haphazard. We do a decent job of caring for the people, but just the process is very clunky. So I think I'm going to figure out a way to pair up maybe like our RLCs or hall directors and the higher up staff, the central staff, and work on a way to where we're dividing that out a little better. I think the biggest problem is that we all get super stressed about these major problems and like are dealing with 10 of them instead of maybe 2 that we could divide up.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, David. I think that is probably a really common thread among us of, you know, we're all responsible for X thing. It can be divided out among the people who have similar roles, but how do you divide it out in a way that is effective, equitable, that kind of stuff? And so I don't necessarily manage much with care, but in my role, we've got 3 of us that have the same job but different responsibilities within those positions. And sometimes that's really helpful because it's like, oh, this is about conferences, it goes to this person. Other times it's a problem that could be happening in any of the residence halls and they need a solution and they need it now. And so one way that we break up the work is we're kind of assigned to specific halls to support them as their contracts and assignment specialists. So that helps. But then what do you do if somebody's out, or what do you do when somebody is getting 10 referrals versus 2 for somebody else? And how do you make it as even as possible, knowing that even doesn't really exist? So thank you all for sharing. The report back, which we've just kind of gone through of, what did you come up with? One question I wanted to ask though, are there opportunities for co-presentation at your institution or with other folks with similar positions at other institutions, or even across the content areas? So I'll share that I presented last year at the Business Operations Conference with 2 colleagues from the business operations realm, one at Northwestern, Alex Dominguez, and then Janie Secco at University of Washington, and then I'm at Iowa. So we had a pretty varied approach to our topic, which was navigating emotions in student housing processes, because we all work in the administrative side, the assignments, the contracts. But just because we're dealing with contracts doesn't mean we don't deal with lots of emotions. So just wanted to provide that as an example of, the three of us have different roles, but in similar veins, and we were able to kind of share our different approaches to those topics. Does anyone else want to share any ideas they have for co-presentation with colleagues or with folks in different content areas that might be just a shout out for now, but could turn into some action with a presentation proposal later?
I can go. So I have been toying with the idea of I am working in operations and I work a lot with my director. And we're facing the issue of what processes should be technology focused in our, housing software versus what are some processes that we want to keep manual. And yes, it's very tedious, but paper, and getting in front of the students and saying, hey, this is us, this is housing. So her and I, we're very communicative, and I know that I floated out the idea of how do you assess should this be a technology focused process versus a in-person or very manual process? And I think we've done fairly well with that. Obviously, there's always room for improvement. So I know I floated the idea of her co-presenting with me because she sees more of that residence life side. So I know that for her room changes, they never are going to go online, which is a very unique thing when I've been talking to other people. So I think I think from an operations perspective, it's a very interesting dynamic. And in what way do you shift? So that might be coming. So yeah.
We would love to see it. That would be great. I think it's a really important question because it is very easy to say, well, let's add a form, let's add a process, let's add an application. But that also comes with administrative burden on the folks who have to create those, pathways in the application or within the housing portal, if that's what you use. And then, if it's on staff to review the results on that, is it easy to get through the results, or would it just be easier to sort through 10 paper responses? Who knows? I don't have the answer to that one. Well, I'm really appreciative of the time that you all have spent with us today. Some next steps in closing. I encourage you to carve out some time in your schedule over the next 3 weeks to start building your proposal. Start reaching out to colleagues for those co-presentation opportunities. You can always post in the ACUHO-I online forum that you've got an idea you'd love someone to co-present with, and you might find a buddy that way. Or if you've got, different networks within your regions to be able to send a message out to a listserv, that kind of thing. And then make sure that you get your proposal in by April 30th through the ACUHO-I's website. And then, of course, please reach out to me if you need support or have questions or you're trying to find somebody to connect with. I might have someone in mind. So thank you for joining us today.